Slay J here from Talk Nerdy to Me, and I'm here to talk nerdy to you about Silent Night. I want to preface this movie is actually silent. It has no dialogue. But there are some music, there is some subtitles. It's not entirely quiet like a quiet place, but there is no dialogue. Let me just say that I was not prepared for that, but it did lend a deeper meaning to the title of the movie. This movie starts off with a crazy chase scene where this dude's running after a couple of cars. It doesn't make sense in the beginning, but they eventually explain it. At one point, the main character catches up to one of the cars and hits the windshield with this rod. Didn't make sense to me. Not sure what he thought was going to happen. Eventually, the antagonist gets out of the vehicle, beats him up, and ends up shooting him in the throat. This is kind of how we get introduced to why this character cannot speak. The main character's name is Brian, and he's played by Joel Kinnaman, which is the same dude that played RoboCop back in 2014. We eventually find out that the antagonist is the one that unalived Brian's son, which throws Brian into this spiral. We start seeing him become an alcoholic. He doesn't treat his wife well. You see the anguish in this character. You see him kind of just start depleting. He ultimately pushes his wife away from him. His wife decides to leave him. And then we see Brian start to train to get back at this gang, the antagonist pretty much. This being an action movie, I wasn't really expecting too much of a story, but they did do a good job at showing each character's anguish, the interaction between his wife and himself during that time period. You could really feel the hurt, you could feel the anger in the character, and you could feel the resentment from him to his wife pretty much. And then you just start to begin to humanize yourself with the wife, thinking she lost her son too. I will just say that there were a ton of plot holes though. There's this detective that's assigned to his case. You see him at the beginning leave his card in the ER or the recovery room, but we don't really gain much story from that at all. Brian ends up visiting the police station, seeing the gang essentially. He figures out who they are, and then he goes and tracks them down, kind of like a detective himself, taking photos of them, learning their routes and their things to kind of be more smart about his attack. Then later in the movie, we see the detective kind of join up with Brian, which didn't make sense. They, like I said, tons of plot holes. They don't explain that much. I don't know what they were doing with that. So knowing that this is an action movie, I didn't fixate on the plot holes, but they were glaring. There are some great fight scenes and some good high-speed chases, but I did sit there and feel bad for the wife. I can really only imagine how it is to lose your own child and then also have to deal with your significant other pushing you away. But they did a great job of kind of showing that humanistic side of the wife and Brian. Overall, due to the gapping plot holes, the motivation of the characters slowly being explained, and the ridiculous situations that came forth in this movie, I will have to say that this movie is a rent. I did appreciate the creativeness that John Woo was aiming for, but maybe a director's cut would make this a must-see. I just want to thank you for letting me talk nerdy to you today, and stay nerdy, Planet Earth.